Good evening, everyone. We always proceed each council meeting with a word of prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like, please feel free to join us. And Miss Isby, could I ask you to word our prayer, please, ma'am?
You'll bow with me. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for the abundant blessings that you've given us. We just thank you, Lord, for this city that you've given us to be stewards over. And we just ask, Lord, that everything that we do will be pleasing in your sight. And we pray, Lord, that you get the glory. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now call this meeting to order. Mr. Gale, would you take the roll, please, sir?
Thank you. Mr. Hawkins?
Here.
Mr. Grimes? Here. Don't see Mr. Pruitt. Ms. Mel?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter? Here. Ms. Smith? Online. Mr. Jones? Here. Ms. Isby?
Here.
Okay, you should have received copies of the city council minutes for April 13th. Any corrections, changes, or comments?
Make a motion for approval as submitted. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. If no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. I would like to ask the council if they would at this time if we could suspend the rules. We're in a kind of a time crunch on our raise grant. We've got James here with us tonight. Thought we'd just start with him and then figure out how the council wants to proceed.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. James.
All right, this is different being at the lectern. I don't know this. I feel like I'm back in a groove with this. It feels nice to be here speaking at a lectern. On this issue, I realize this has been something that has been hotly debated for several years. I know that it's something that what I've sensed in it is that there's passion, and when there's conflict at times, that can give birth to good things, right? And I think it's very good that we have had folks that are very passionate about this particular issue. That's good. I think with this, in terms of looking at it, another way to look at this is that we have an opportunity tonight to stand united behind making a strong commitment to trail investments within Conway over a multi-year period across multiple projects. And I think that's a very positive thing. With the resolution that the mayor is bringing forward, it's to pursue a planning grant for the RAISE grant, which is Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. With doing that, it would sort of be I would say, a revised and expanded trail project. So in terms of looking at that, it's not scrapping what has been done previously. It's building upon that, reworking it, and then also looking at the possibility of e-bike share feasibility with that. So it's sort of working on those two things. Now, we've been at this, we've looked at it for several years, and I think the question is, why now? Or why are we doing this? Why are we, maybe potentially changing stream with this? One of the aspects is that the current, I guess the last year's grant has to be reconstituted. The route of it has to be reconstituted. We've all seen the progress that's been made on Donaghy Avenue. It's there, it's in the ground. Unfortunately, when we look in the grant application and the sort of the notice of funding availability and looking at that, previously incurred expenses can't be included as a match. And so when we're looking at Donaghy Avenue, which constitutes from both the city and Conway Corp portion, that's $7 million of both sort of the aspect of the project, part of it that we were talking about as part of the overall project, but that's also $7 million a match that's out of that. And so that's something that we have to answer that question, okay, how do we reconstitute the project so that it's no longer a $12 million project, but it's back up at that large size, because one of the reasons that we previously got rejected was it was too small. The other thing is, where do we come up with the match? In terms of looking at that from a raised construction grant. It ultimately is a question of what other project are we going to say no to that we have committed to, in essence. The other thing is that the existing route is problematic in terms of looking at it in multiple places. For instance, it routes a 12-foot trail in front of houses on Timber Peg. When you look at it on the aerial image of the plans, you've got cars that are cut in half because there's trail that you see on the aerial image. So I think, routing it in that particular location is a problem because we're going to continually have issues with people parking over the trail. And it's going to be, I think, a huge surprise to those property owners if we did that. That would be something that would be, I think, rather alarming. We've had some issues as well, with the Bruce Street folks, but I think it brings up a point that we haven't had a lot of public engagement about the route or thinking about it or any sort of public hearings that I'm aware of. So that's there's some concerns there. So that kind of leads me into why look at a planning grant. In terms of some specific elements that with the change from build to raise. Now, when we talk about raise, it's rebuilding American infrastructure with sustainability and equity. So anytime that they change that name, build, it was about one thing. There's two really big key terms in there that it was with this new grant application, sustainability and equity. Talking about environmental justice, environmental sustainability, equity, income equity, racial equity. These are all things that are large components of the new sort of grant application. So our current application is, I would say, somewhat weak in terms of addressing innovation. Not to say that trails are not an innovative thing, but I'm not sure in terms of that component what distinguishes us from other folks that are applying for the same type of thing. In other applications that I've seen that have gotten funded, for example, the Grant Avenue Parkway in Springfield that was funded in 2019, they included things like public Wi-Fi along the trail. And from a perspective, when I saw that, I thought, man, that would be neat, but we would really need to give Conway Corp lead time. That's a big undertaking for them to commit to for funding in terms of that. That is a big deal. I thought about it in terms of, one of the inequities that we've seen that has kind of become apparent with COVID is broadband access. And this is running through two of the lowest income census tracts in Conway. Wouldn't it be neat to use this as a mechanism to provide some of those kids in those neighborhoods access to Wi-Fi, access to internet in a place where they could do things like homework that could be kind of transformational, have a direct impact on those folks' lives. And so, with that, that's one of the reasons why with the planning grant talking about evaluating e-bikes is one of those elements. One of the other things is in kind of the way that the application is currently constituted is we don't really do a great job of incorporating sustainability. Obviously, when you're talking about trails, some level of mode shift, I think that there's an argument that one can make there, but I think there's so much more potential to do more. There's so much more potential to do more in terms of addressing the issue of environmental sustainability. Part of the route that I think really needs to stay in with the grant is going along Little Creek. Little Creek ends up running into Lake Conway. And the Corps of Engineers, University of Arkansas, they've done studies on Lake Conway, and there's problems with sedimentation. Largely, those problems with sedimentation are occurring because of the city of Conway, unfortunately. And so I think, with this project, either through outdoor education on part that runs through there, through the implementation of low-impact development types of drainage infrastructure in that area, a variety of ways, I think that we can really take a look and address that issue and do something that starts to unwind that process of what has been happening with Lake Conway. I don't want to turn around and, have grandchildren, children that deal with a Lake Conway that doesn't have fish anymore, that doesn't have, is not viable. And so I think this provides an opportunity to take a look at that and be more and address that. And then I think finally is kind of the component of racial equity and public engagement. Mentioned earlier, up to this point, we haven't really done a great job in terms of engaging the community. Like I mentioned about the sort of in front of Timber Peg, I think if those folks realized that there's a trail that is supposed to go in front of their house, they probably might have some objections to it. And we haven't done a really good job of informing the public or asking the public about that. And so when we think about this, we think about it from a perspective of the grant application and the fact that it goes through two of the lowest income census tracts in our community. It goes through two of the census tracts where we have the highest amount of racial diversity in our community. And we haven't done anything substantial in terms of public engagement. I think we can do better. I really think in terms of that, we can do better. We can do better of asking that community what they want. What components of this do they want? Rather than turning around and saying, this is what you're going to get. I don't think that's the right way to handle it. But with that, I'll entertain any questions.
James, remind me, what was the amount of the previous grant? What was the total?
So the previous grant total, flip through here, it was total cost $27 million.
Okay, and
Yeah.
it's a 20% match on these things?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Did that
Yep.
include the match, the 27 million?
27 million total, yes, that includes, so the portion that, and I apologize, when I said 20 and 7 million, so the total was 27 million, build grant, the portion that we sought for funding was 20,391,000, and the match that we were including was 7,048,000. So it was a 25% match that we previously looked at.
So this is coming as a bit of a surprise because we just met on Friday and it wasn't on the agenda. And I had conversations today about this and it never came up. So I'm just saying this came as a surprise to come up tonight. Talk to me about the timeline for applying for the planning grant and who should be at the table and when you think we could actually apply for a full grant.
So in terms of looking at it from a perspective of
Or let me step back. Can you have a planning grant ready with the right people at the table by the July deadline
I do think that's feasible, yes. Yes, absolutely.
with everything I just asked?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And so when could we apply for a real grant, a full grant?
So in discussions, in terms of the way that we've talked about this and looked at it, structuring it such that it is a phased approach, because basically with the planning grant, what we'd be applying for is planning and design, right? For essentially taking us to I would say a further place than we currently are in terms of the trail, right? The overall, what you call Connect Conway. So,
But the grant would have to include all those phases.
what I'm saying is we would phase it and structure it in such a way that enabled us to make an application in 2022 for construction.
So you're saying within a year?
Yes.
No, that's not right.
Well, we're 2021, apply 2022. So apply for a planning grant 2021, apply for a construction grant 2022.
Okay, and so we'll be notified in November, towards the end of November, if we got whatever grant, if we got it.
And that gives you 6 months.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it with the planning grant is phasing that in a way that we put a large priority on the aspect of the project that we know we want to apply for a construction grant for. And then sort of some of the broader things that we look at, because the idea that we have talked about in terms of this and the way that we've looked at this is that this is a multi-year, multi-project type of thing, that we're looking at a sort of a larger span, so that after we handle the things that we're looking at with the construction grant side of it, that then we turn around and take those other products that we have and we go and apply for MetroPlan grants. We go and apply for recreational trail project grants on that. So,
After the planning grant, we're not gonna apply for trails with this?
yes, absolutely.
Oh, you said MetroPlan, so,
Yeah, so apply for a construction grant related to what we would get awarded in this grant for in 2022. There would be additional aspects, because we're talking about a multi-project, multi-year type of deal, that what we're applying for would be larger than what we would necessarily apply for directly in 2022 for a construction grant.
so the raised grant wouldn't pay for everything that
Right.
we planned for?
Yeah, well, I
Is
mean,
what
you
you're
know, part of the idea, yeah, is to have this is sort of a strategic effort to make trails a big part of the next 5-10 years in terms of what the city does. So
So
it's
how
a-
much do you envision asking for a full-fledged grant? The full amount available, the 25 million, or close to 20 million? And if it's close to what we asked for before, what pieces fall off as we add other pieces?
So I think, you know, in terms of applying for it, I think it's reconstituting the route that we've looked at. I think a big component of that is going to be figuring out what the specific engineering estimates are related to that, and how much that's going to be.
And that can't happen between now and July.
It would be very, very, very difficult. And I mean,
So that can't happen. I'm gonna write that down. That can't happen before July.
what I'm saying is very, very, very difficult to get to that point.
I think it's very admirable that you want to make something bigger and better. What I want to know right now is, when did you start working on this, and why are we just now finding out about this?
So you're talking about
I'm
with
talking about what you're talking about right now.
with the raise grant? Basically the day that the NOFA came out, the Notice of Funding Availability for Raise Grant.
And then when was that?
That would have been, yeah.
2 days ago. Yeah?
No, the NOFA came out before that.
Okay. Can you give me that date? 22nd. So
I
you've
don't,
been working on this that long, yes?
I mean, it's building upon what's already been done, but immediately evaluating what's in that Notice of Funding Availability, and seeing what would make us competitive, more competitive than we've been for the grant.
I don't know anybody sitting at this table that doesn't want that to happen. It's something good for Conway to happen. But I'm feeling like we're playing a shell game. I don't feel like we're getting the truth. This shows up tonight. We have to suspend the rules to put this on the meeting tonight. Why were we not informed of this?
That's not a question I can answer.
I guess that would fall on me, and I'm not, I think the shell game going on here, because we had talked about it Friday. And, you know, I've had some private discussions about it. The whole reason I brought it up tonight.
Your mic's not on, sir.
I'm sorry, there's two.
Is if we're gonna move forward, we need to start moving forward tonight, and it's up to y'all, it's your vote. If y'all choose to not do this tonight, then we will be back on May 11th with the full grant that y'all vote on there.
It may be a little too quick to pull a trigger tonight either way, but we do need to pull a trigger something pretty quick, but maybe not tonight. But switching gears back to the original grant and the route, I think there's more than just a little problem with the Timber Peg Bruce connection. I think the residents started getting wind of, I'll be honest, when I first saw this, whenever it was, 3 years ago, when I first started applying 4 years ago, I didn't realize how intrusive some of those trails would be. I was thinking more sidewalk, we're talking more 12-foot path, we're getting into the nuts and bolts, but this is a very important nut and bolt part of it. Those folks from Timber Peg and Bruce got kind of spooked, and I think before I'm willing to vote to pursue a project that big that cuts up our neighborhood, I really think we need to talk to those folks, hear from them in a more public format. So I'm certainly not prepared to proceed to that until we have some talks with the folks that it impacts directly.
Well, I agree with you, man. We talk about being transparent, we don't even.
Me too.
We talk about being transparent and everything, and that's one of the reasons why I got on the city council, so people wouldn't just throw things on you without you knowing. And I think we need to have input from the people. That's just my opinion.
And I know there's more than one way to run that route. Some of it gets pretty tricky, but there's more than one way to run that route. But until we firm it up, I don't want to leave those folks hanging, because if you just leave it hanging, it could end up being what they don't want and what we don't want.
When is the last day we can decide on this?
Yep, that, when, yeah,
I mean, it is critical in terms of, you know, honestly, for really competitive applications, you have done work that started well in advance of where we're at right now. You know, we've got things that we can build upon and use, but it still is very, very difficult. And regardless of the reason why we're here and anything that transpired in the past or this, that, or the other, we're here, right? I mean, we're at the point that we're at, and making some level of a determination decision is pretty important sooner rather than later, I would say.
So to put it another way, when is the grant application due, regardless of what grant it might be?
July 12th.
Okay, so what you're saying is, if we're gonna go the planning route, you gotta hurry up and get that together before July 12th.
Yes.
Well, I think either one, we have to hurry up and get together.
Yeah.
before-
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
under the gun regardless.
Yes.
That is accurate to say.
Yeah.
isn't everybody else in the country under the same gun at this point in time?
You know, that's a good.
Everybody's having to resubmit, aren't they?
Everybody's having to resubmit. Everybody's having to take another look at it. I think what makes it difficult is I think there's probably other applications where you could say, hey, we've done this public engagement in advance, and that probably, you know, that helps check off a few more boxes. It might address some other things. And so it's really about how do we best adapt what we're looking at to make it fit within the box that has been handed down.
I think my personal opinion is I'd like to see some kind of an outline of what you're talking about. Whatever that happens to be, whether it's roads or bike paths or whatever it is, I'd like to see it before we get a vote called on it.
That's understandable.
I'm like Mr. Grimes and Ms. Mel, we've got to get citizen input. Mr. Jones has said that. We've got to get input from people. If we're gonna switch things up, and I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's enough time for you to get this together.
We're in a difficult spot. That's I don't know, not sure there's any other way to put it.
Well, I'm all for advancing everything in Conway. I'm about helping Conway, but it's just a whole lot of stuff I don't know. And if I don't know, I know that the citizens don't know. And I think we need to get some facts down, like you said, about where we're going before we so much just
I'm just saying, like, sign a blank check, I need to know what exactly are we doing? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 100% for trying to get the grant, but let me find out what exactly is going on. And you said we've been talking about that, well, I don't even know who we is, see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Who-
absolutely.
Who is we? This is the first time I heard of it.
In terms of I'm talking about in terms of previous build grant applications, so
Well,
it's
you said-
something.
You said we've been working on this for days, well, who is we been working on? That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I thought you meant we've been talking about this for years.
You said we've been working on this for days, who is we?
City staff.
James, do you think you could have something like Mr. Hawkins described, an outline or something that talks about specific attributes? I mean, obviously, you can't put together a planning grant between now and the next city council meeting, but something that gives us a much better sense and includes, and I think it's a really valid point, the citizen input, because the east side is not served.
Yeah.
And it needs to be. And we've invested $26 million in an overpass, and we need to take advantage of that. What happens with the rest? We have CARES Act money that we think we can spend on broadband. I don't think it can be used for match, but, are we using the right resources for the right thing? I mean, I know you were bringing that up as an example, as something innovative. So is that something you could have ready by the next council meeting?
In terms of an outline
Yes, an
structure?
outline, yeah.
I mean, essentially what the planning grant is for planning and design of a reconstituted route and e-bike feasibility. That's what it is.
Well, if I can interrupt, now Friday at our retreat, you gave a pretty broad and lengthy outline of what the plan would look like. I mean, are you wanting something more specific than even that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, because he's talked about having public input.
Yeah, oh yeah, now,
And-
beyond
and
all
so-
that, I
So
think,
all the pieces you think need to be added, you've talked about building on what we already have. Okay, what pieces are you gonna keep? And then what pieces do you see you need to add? My understanding would be that would have to be part of the planning grant.
Absolutely,
So-
yeah. That's basically
that's
defining scope, yes.
I agree, but let me make sure we're talking about the same thing here. The planning grant, if awarded, would be used to do all this planning we're talking about wanting him to do before next meeting.
Right, but we have to, no.
Well, what do you want to see before next
No,
meeting?
is a more fleshed out outline of
Of what we're gonna plan later?
of,
if we get the
of
grant.
what key points are gonna be included that we're asking money for with the planning grant, because the planning grant's gonna pay for things.
Yeah,
So,
I'm 100%
it's go-
tracking with you.
Okay, so okay, that's what I think, and that's kind of what Theo and Andy were both talking about.
Yeah.
Was, a better sense of than just saying, yeah, go ahead and submit any planning grant you want. Having a much better sense and making sure between now and then that the public knows that we're asking this. I think this is a perfect opportunity to start building on that.
Yeah.
So is a planning grant not so we can plan for what we want to build?
I would say with the planning grant, what you were looking at is we're saying we've kind of got this bubble of connection here to here, and we got some elements that we think we want to generally adhere to this sort of general alignment or this corridor. With that, the planning grant, what we're doing is we're reevaluating environmental risks with that, doing public engagement on the front end, doing environmental justice screening tools, racial equity screening tools in terms of looking at that, going in and talking to the neighborhood and say, what are the best ways that we can interface this so that it doesn't just bypass the neighborhood, but it integrates and ties in with that east side community.
But I guess what I'm getting at is, if we get the planning grant, that's when we start planning. I mean, we start bringing people in, seeing what we want, how we want
Yeah,
to
Yeah.
build it.
yeah. I mean, the outline is an outline of what we plan to work on with the planning grant.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
Right, and hopefully it would fund things like the engineering that you're talking about.
Yes, so
It-
planning and design.
yeah. And so those are the things that would be in that list.
So we really
for
don't
that
have
one.
to have a dead set plan before we.
No, 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 but we have to have an idea of what we're gonna present to the public, and we have some pieces. And we got, you know, some bullet points from you on Friday, so we know some of those pieces. But I think there's more in James's mind, than even what he presented on, no, and I mean that in a good way. Yeah, no, I mean that in a good way. That he's thinking, you know, and so I think that helps us have a better sense too, as we're out talking to the public about it, which we should be doing.
The only thing she's saying is, we're not talking negative to you. We, like she said, it's things in your mind, and we trying to get some of it out of your mind to us, so we can tell people what's in your mind.
Hey,
I
my
mean,
mind
if
is
it-
my mind is a scary place, so
know,
I don't want to invite you in there.
That's why I said some of the things in your
Yeah,
mind, all right?
it's better if it comes out rather than you come in. Yeah, I 100% agree.
So could we table this resolution till our next meeting and then have that and then go from there? I don't want to reject this.
No, I don't either.
I mean, I make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table this resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Hey, can I ask a question? Yeah. Is it any way if you can come up with something that's before then, that you can get it to us?
Before that night, as you get it?
Yeah.
Well, we will work as fast as possible.
I mean, I'm just saying, so we already have an idea before we just come in the meeting.
Yeah, I understand that.
And be married to somebody who worked on a PhD dissertation, it doesn't need to be that. No, no, I'm talking digestible pieces.
Yeah.
So that we can kind of say, okay, this is the parts, this is what we're thinking.
I'll leave out the multivariate regression
Yes.
analysis and heat
I
mapping.
don't want to have a thesaurus next to me.
We have a motion and a second to table this resolution. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
No, I mean, I genuinely mean this when I say that the passion around this is positive. And the fact that this is all that we're talking about, I think it's, you know, conflict as it relates to that can give birth to really good things. And so, you know, I think we are on the precipice of doing something big. And I think this is a night that we can point back to and say, hey, you know, although we tabled it, but we're heading towards a decision of making a really big decision that I think is going to be transformational for our community. You know, we'll look back decades from now and say, man, it was really smart of the leaders at the time to do this.
I hope I'll be around decades from now. Just saying.
After our next meeting, you're going to start burning the midnight oil.
I already burn it sometimes. So
I'd suggest you get started now, and
I'm already there.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walden. Next up, we have our monthly financial report that is ending May 31st. And we'll turn that over to Mr. Winningham.
Good evening, everybody. Don't have a whole lot to
We
talk about.
can't hear you, Tyler.
Tyler, we can't hear you.
Well, it shows I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Tyler, I can hear you.
I think there's a song by that title. I see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. What is it? It could be it. It could be it. It could be it.
How about now?
We can hear you. There you are. I can see you now.
Okay, good evening, everybody. There's not just a whole lot to talk about tonight. We did have a really good month in March for sales tax. It was up 14%. And if your next question is why, I can't really answer that for you. I don't really know. Last year, the same month was up 9% over 2019. So I wouldn't say that this was necessarily a correction for anything. Sometimes if a month is down, you know, it's atypical for us to see a down month. So if we were to have a down month, it would be expected that the same month of next year would be up significantly, to make up for that difference. But that's not the case here. So I think we're just gonna smile and say thank you and move on. You know, one of the possibilities could be that some folks were spending some of their stimulus money after the holidays.
That's all you need to know.
But, you know, anything would be speculation at this point, really. But overall, all of our operating funds are in good shape to finish out the first quarter of 2021. And, you know, if you look through there, expenditures are down, revenues are fairly steady. So I'll be glad to answer any questions or discuss anything further if the council wishes.
Make a motion, we approve the financial statements?
Have a motion and a second to approve the monthly financial statement ending March 31st. No further discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Winningham.
Yes, sir.
Next up, we have Community Development. Mr. Hawkins, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item is a resolution requesting that the Faulkner County Tax Collector place some liens against property due to incurred expenses by the city. The one piece of property that we have tonight is at 2103 West Street. We've spent $129.42 in correcting some items at that location. Is there an owner or representative of an owner online that would like to address this particular location? Again, it's 2103 West Street. Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone in attendance in person or online, so with that, we have a resolution to be read for this item. It's Resolution R 2130.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution to place a lien on property located at 2103 West Street in the amount of $129.42. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution approving the Recreational Trails Program Funds Grant for the Kinley Trail Extension for the Transportation Department, and this is Resolution R 2131.
Make a motion for the adoption of the resolution.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution for Recreational Trails Program Funds Grant for the Kinley Trail Extension for the Transportation Department. Any further discussion?
Can you tell us the route or where this is going to be extended?
Finley?
Yes, sir, I can. So you probably are all aware that the Kinley Trail right now ends pretty much at Hogan near Walmart. And so we've been working on some conceptual plans, environmental documents, and public outreach for about a year now to extend it southward toward the airport along the creek, underneath the bridge at Dave Ward, and then, gosh, I can't remember how many, about 1,000 feet maybe, and then west towards Lawley Road. And we've been working with some property owners there, working on some, I'd say we're at about maybe, I don't know, 30%, 20% drawing, something like that, done a lot of hydraulics. I don't anticipate, so obviously this is a resolution asking for your permission to apply for the grant. We have not applied for the grant yet. The conceptual cost estimate to do the whole thing is $1.7 million. It's an 80% match. What we're applying for isn't a 20% match rather. I think it's very possible that if we do win the grant, it won't be enough to build the whole thing, but that's the direction we're headed.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I know the bike community is very supportive of that extension, because riding your bike on Dave Ward Drive is not fun.
That's the one that Tom Courtway and Johnny Adams have been working with the property owners along that ditch to get us some right of way. All right, Mr. Garrett, would you call the vote, please?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is the resolution approving the TAP grant for the College Side Path project for the Transportation Department. Have a resolution for this item. It's Resolution R 2132.
Finley, would you like to bring us up to speed a little bit more on that one?
Sure thing. This is similar. It's actually the same, essentially the same pot of money as the previous grant application project that I just talked about. It's just that one is for transportation alternatives and the other one is for recreational trails. So that first one was recreational trails. This one's transportation alternatives. So we've been working now for well over a year on creating on design drawings to create a connection, a side path on the north side of College between Salem and Ferris. Again, this is a 20% match. We're asking you to approve this resolution giving us permission to apply for the grant. This one is important to me because this is an important connection, one piece of an important connection that will ultimately connect the Stone Dam Creek Trail to the Kinley Trail.
Thank you, Finley.
Make a motion, we approve the resolution?
We have a motion and a second to approve this resolution to approve the TAP grant for the College Side Path Project for Transportation Department. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to acquire property at 2035 Prince Street for the Donaghy Phase 2 roadway project for the Transportation Department. Resolution numbers are 2133.
Finley, would you discuss this, please, sir?
I believe this is the southeast corner of Donaghy and Prince. Charles has been working on this one with me. I know I've had an in-person meeting with the property owner and several telephone conversations. I believe Charles has had quite a bit of contact with this property owner as well, but this is one of the corners that's necessary to complete the phase 2 of the Donaghy Avenue roundabout at Prince Street.
So is this the corner pantry side? That'd be southeast, right? Am I thinking about that right?
This is.
No, you're Prince. You're too far north.
If
Oh, it says Prince and Donaghy. Am I wrong? Okay, sorry.
This will take you out to the high school.
That's that house that Jeff Strandage remodeled here a couple of years ago, right there on the corner.
Okay.
And put the shutters
Yes.
on it?
Yeah.
Okay, I know that corner.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm too far. I'm on Tyler.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just turn around, come back,
Yep.
we'll get you to Prince Street.
Turn around, come back. As soon as the roundabout gets there, I can do that, right?
Well, that's,
We have a motion and a second to approve this resolution. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to purchase a sign printer for the Transportation Department. Ordinance number 2134. I'm sorry? I'm sorry. That is my fault. It is an ordinance 021, and the ordinance number is 44.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Finley, tell us a little bit about your sign making machine here.
Sure. So the way that we currently make signs is we lay multiple pieces of film on top of one another and cut the letters out to create the different colors. That's old technology. It's been around for a long time. It's tried and true, but newer technology allows us to just use one piece of white material and actually print the color on the white material, just like a printer. The advantage of this is that it uses far less material, half as much or less. My technicians determined that this printer should pay for itself in 2 or 3 years, just as a result of the savings.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Aye. Mr. Ledbetter?
yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Ordinance to purchase, I'm sorry, he's on a spending spree in case that didn't come through. Ordinance to purchase tractor equipment for the Transportation Department, and it's ordinance O-2145.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings. Second?
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Finley, this isn't to fix that mower I tore up, is it?
No, sir,
You been
it's
driving
still
again?
running.
Do what?
You been driving again?
No, that was my tractor last time.
Oh.
A couple of years ago, a few years back, Finley was a little bit behind on mowing, so I was gonna help him mow, and, well, somebody stuck a culvert out there somewhere, and I didn't see it, so. Mr. Vincent,
Yeah, so the mower that we have is getting old and is nearing the end of its serviceable life. But we do plan to keep it in service because there are certain times of the year where we really could use running an additional mower. But like I said, it's getting old enough where we don't really want to depend on it anymore as our primary mower. It's time to get a new one, but we'll during the peak of the summer we'll just run an additional mower. And we've got a Sourcewell contract, cooperative purchasing contract that we're using to make this purchase.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
By the way, that came with a 22-foot machete bush hog, so it wasn't just a tractor. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to replace sprinklers for the Donaghy Avenue improvements for the Transportation Department. Mr. Benson, one more time, we have an ordinance for this. It's O-2146.
Yes, sir, and thank you for the clarification on that last ordinance. This is for to repair the sprinkler systems that have been damaged as a result of the Donaghy Street improvements. I'm sure at least one of you is thinking, why was it not included in the contractor's contract when he did the work? The reason for that is, I'm sure that the mayor knows even more about this than I do, but it's difficult for a construction contractor to bid irrigation repair because he just doesn't know what he's going to get into with all of the underground irrigation. So if we were to include that in the construction contract, we would likely have paid a much higher price than this because he would have had to pad the estimate so much. So it's just a lot more effective to hire a contractor to come back and fix what's broken once things have been torn up. Of course, things are not torn up in a bad way. The contractors be careful to just cut and cap any irrigation system that he's encountered, and he's marked all those locations. We have them all, so it should be relatively easy for an irrigation contractor to come back and repair any damage. And the most cost-effective and efficient thing to do is to use the contractor. Since this is pretty much all the UCA property, they have a contractor that they generally use for irrigation repair, and we're desiring to use the same contractor to make these adjustments and repairs.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second?
We got to waive the 3 readings.
Oh,
I thought we did.
No, we did not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
That's
made a
okay.
motion to waive the 3 readings.
second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Now I'll make
There you go, Ms. Isby.
adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Mel? Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Ledbetter? Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Turns off right when I'm going to talk. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance authorizing the reclassification of one groundskeeper position for the Transportation Department, and we have an ordinance for this, ordinance O-2147.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Mr. Vincent?
Yes, sir. So we find ourselves with 3 vacant groundskeeper positions that we're having a very hard time filling. But we have located an individual with a CDL license that would be very helpful and beneficial to us. And so I think it makes a lot of sense for our department to reclassify one of these vacant positions and to hire this qualified individual. CDL drivers can be very hard to find.
You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Mr. Ledbetter? That they're hard to find?
Make a motion to adopt the ordinance along with the emergency clause.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Jones? Yes. Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
In the emergency clause, Mr. Ledbetter? Yes. Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Those both pass 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Vinson. You had a long night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hawkins?
Next item is an ordinance accepting and appropriating donation funds to the Conway Tree Board. This will be an accounting ordinance. James has stepped up. Are you wanting to talk about this?
I need to, if not, I'll not.
That
You
means
a little gun shy now.
it's accounting. I didn't know that was your forte.
What, no, it's purely the tree board got a donation from Conway Corporation, so wanted to give them some kudos.
Good. Thank you very much.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
This will be O 2148. Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance accepting the 2021 AHPP to resurvey the Conway Commercial National Register of Historic Places Historic District. We have an ordinance for this one. It's ordinance O 2149.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Mr. Walden, would you like to talk to this, sir?
Yes, so with the resurvey, we apply every year for grants from the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. One of the things coming out of our historic preservation plan that we had was to resurvey all of our historic National Register historic districts at least once every 10 years. So it's been a good while since the downtown district has been resurveyed. In addition, the Downtown Partnership has some folks on Court Street that would like to be included in the historic district, and so fortunately we're able to bring them in on this survey, and so they'll be included on the survey, included part of that, and hopefully we can get the nomination form for the downtown district updated so that those folks that are wanting to be part of the historic district are included. This is part of I would say, a multi-prong effort to essentially take the downtown commercial historic district from now being sort of a National Register honorific district to a local ordinance district, which is principally intended to prohibit demolition without approval by the Historic District Commission. So there's no match on this. They funded it totally, so it's just, I'm not gonna say free money because it's it's state money, so it's all coming from our back pockets, but in terms of the city, it is.
Have we redistricted or redrawn the boundaries of this district ever?
It has not been, not since it was originally surveyed and created.
And what I heard you say just now is that some people are wanting in? Is that
Correct,
what I heard
yeah.
you say?
Yeah, so there's some properties on Court Street in talking with Kim at the Downtown Partnership and the Chamber. They've got properties that they're wanting to reinvest in, and part of the math of making that work is that they need some of the tax credits. And so bringing them into the district helps make that work. And so it's us working with them on that.
That tells me the reasoning. That's
Yes, sir.
where I was headed. Thank you.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance requesting to rezone property at 1406 Scott Street. It presently is zoned R2A. The requested zoning is C1, and this was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on, I'm looking for the date, April 19th of this year. And at that time, the vote was 8-0 to forward this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. In that case, we have an ordinance to read. It's ordinance O-2150.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Move for the adoption of the ordinance.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a request for a conditional use permit to allow multifamily residential in an S1 zoning district for property at 405 South Donaghy Avenue. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their April 19th meeting, and at that time, the commission voted 9-0, that this request be forwarded to City Council with a recommendation of approval with 10 conditions. They are a lot of the ones that we usually see, including fencing and lighting and signage, and that list is included there. And with those conditions, I move that we grant this conditional use permit.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this conditional use permit. Any further discussion?
Does have a trail connection. Conditions.
There's a nice trail back there.
Yeah.
Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 6-0. Mr. Hawkins, you're the last one for the
I'm
night.
going to tell you, Mr. Mayor, this has been lengthy. But we're getting through it, though.
Eventually. Hey, Kiera.
Next item is an ordinance requesting the rezoning of property at 1116 Gum Street from C3 to PUD for the Planning Development Department, and we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance O-2151.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Kiera, you're up.
Hi.
You
So,
had no idea it was this much fun, did you?
not at all. So, of course, I want to talk about the emergency shelter, the overnight emergency shelter, and I first want to express how excited we are about working on this project. This has been something that's been in the works for a while. There's definitely a community need, and as we work through our 5-year consolidated plan and our 1-year plan with CDBG, we've definitely found out how much of a need that is. And so I just want to, of course, thank the project management team and our architecture and our nonprofit that we will also talk about. So the biggest thing with this, of course, is going to be a small overnight emergency shelter with up to 50 beds. It'll house men, women, as well as children. It will have a day room and also provide day services for those who need it. We do plan on adding additional parking in that area, and we also plan on being good neighbors, because one of the biggest things that a lot of people were worried about is the location of this shelter. And so with it being a city-owned location, of course, we have to have higher standards. And so we are making an investment with this property, as you will see. And it will look more like a multi-use facility. And right now, it meets the needs that we have as far as homelessness and serving homeless persons. But in the 20 years, it may not be the need. And so I feel like the investment that we're putting into this space will really serve that purpose now and in the future. And so One of the things that were also brought up in the planning commission was the sidewalks and the walkability. And again, with this location, we think that it's, again, central to a lot of things. So people can grocery shop or get food, and have other services around. And eventually, we want to be able to add sidewalks in that area so they have the ability to connect and walk around and get to where they need to go. I also want to express my excitement. I talked about the nonprofit, but we have been engaging CAPCA, who is a well-established nonprofit in the city of Conway. We are so excited to be working with them. But of course, they've worked with HUD funding before, which we work with. They've had successful years of Project Homeless Connect. And so we thought that they would be a great provider and able to take over this and run with it. And also want to express my excitement and pleasure with working with Level 5, and they'll get an opportunity to come in and speak. But Justin Gilmore and Branson Evans, they've been an absolute joy, and I knew that from the time that we started speaking to them, their passion that they have for community and working on this project. And so I'll give both of them an opportunity if they want to come speak, but that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you, Kiara.
Thank you, Carol.
Welcome.
Gentlemen, would y'all like to say anything? Capca, would y'all like to say anything? We'll let these gentlemen speak. If y'all would like to, step on up. If it's entirely up to you.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I really, truly do. It's been such a pleasure to work with this project management team. It's been a lot of fun. It's been very real. There's been a lot of honesty with this group, both sides, and it really has been a pleasure. It really has been working with them. So I just want to explain a few minutes about the project, if you don't mind. And I'm going to grab these forward real quick. So essentially on this existing site plan, the two properties that are located 1114 and 1116, the existing house, we're actually going to remove that house that's there, but we are going to reuse the existing facility that is the old apartment facility. So in addition to that, we're going to add about 3,000 square foot to that existing facility, as well as 13 parking spaces on this property. We're going to design it in a shape where it actually creates an enclosed courtyard so that all of the day room spaces as well as the overnight spaces can empty out into that courtyard, but be protected from the outside and the outside be protected from that. So from a site standpoint, it's been a really good opportunity to be able to use that existing space. By removing that house, that allows us to add all of the parking on the south side of the property. In the existing building itself, we actually have two large rooms. Again, I kind of consider those to be community rooms. One of them is the day room that would be for daytime use. That has access to laundry facilities as well as shower and restroom facilities throughout that day room space. Then you also have the overnight shelter space. This space can house up to 40 constituents in that facility. And depending upon the time of year and what the mix is, it can be cross-used for more women at one time or more families at one time or more men, whatever that need may be. In this facility, we also have two offices, two main offices for the staffing. We also have two counseling rooms. These counseling rooms, their main purpose is for them to be able to come in, have that one-on-one conversation with an outside counselor or internal counselor, and that is accessed directly off the day room. We're also providing a technology station where they have the ability to come in, utilize computers that are already set up, internet that is already set up. So again, the use of the facility is very functional, but it's also very multi-use. Again, it meets the needs of what's currently there, but it also can meet the needs in the future and adjust to those needs as they change throughout the city. So that's a little bit about the site plan and floor plan. From an exterior standpoint, we've brought these renderings. We're going to leave them with you guys here so you can really get a good close-up view. But on the exterior of the building, again, we mentioned about leaving the existing apartment facility that's there. What we're going to do with that is we're actually going to take the roof off of it. The roof is not in great shape. We're going to raise that another 4 feet so that we have some more interstitial space. We're going to put new trusses and a new roofing system throughout that. When we do that, we're going to leave the brick that's currently on the building, but we're going to paint it. We're going to paint all of that a solid color, and then we're also going to add the extensions of the roof, the wall portions there, as well as the new facilities that we're adding, which will be right along Gum Street. That will all be clad in a masonry type material that would be a painted material as well. We'll paint that the same color as the brick. It gives us a really nice canvas to be able to do what we need to for the future. The main entrance, we're actually going to enclose or add a porte-cochere, a drive-through drop-off area at that front entrance. It's again, very functional, very multi-purpose, not only for dropping off, picking up constituents. A lot of daytime travel happens in these types of facilities where you have shuttle vans that are picking up the constituents to take them to a job, take them to an interview, and bringing them back. So you get that really good flow from that front entrance. Also, donations, we have the ability to do donations at this front door here as well. That front entrance will be clad in a nice stone. It will be a dry stack stone that will again reflect and blend in with the painting that we're doing for all the masonry siding, as well as the painting of the existing brick that's there. So again, from an exterior standpoint, we really are trying to blend the whole building into the entire neighborhood that's there. It's a very heavy residential neighborhood, whether it's multifamily or single family, or there's some duplexes right adjacent to us. We're not trying to get too contemporary on the design. We're trying to leave it as best as we can to blend in with that neighborhood. So that's a little bit about the design pieces itself. We are extremely excited about this project. Again, the 6 months that we've been looking and working into this project, we have really come to understand that true need. And we really feel like this phase one of this project is going to meet that immediate need. And we hope that there's an opportunity to grow this facility in the future because we are serving such a large base here in Conway. So we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies, would y'all like to say something?
You're elected.
I thought I came in with others, but I guess I'm alone. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm Jennifer Welter, and we are CAFCA. So we are here to show our excitement, obviously, for the project. We're so happy to see the commitment that the city is giving in the building. And we are a nonprofit that's been in town. We're about to celebrate our 56th birthday. We serve low-income families. We know it's a right fit for us. We have been serving low income in all different capacities for the last 56 years. And we know this is a need, and we are grateful that it's been recognized and that we're coming together to have a plan. So we're very, very happy. You have put together an amazing dream team in your, they are a dream team, and they are very excited and committed to the project. And we just wanted to be here to say that as well. So we're happy to be here. We feel like we have the knowledge and experience, and we're doing all the research we can to be prepared to help partner with the city to run the shelter.
We appreciate y'all and the tremendous job you've done for 56 years.
Thank you so much.
It's noted. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Council, back to you.
Have we waived the readings?
We have not.
I'll make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Castleberry, would you call the roll? Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Miss Isby? Thought I had a stroke, didn't you? Miss Isby?
Made me look.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Ledbetter? Miss Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Passes 6-0.
Fine job, Mr. Castleberry.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Public Service Committee, and we'll start tonight with can't get that out, an ordinance, I did have a stroke, that better, appropriating funds for improvements to be made at Gatlin Park for the Conway Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Ibbotson, man, we're glad to see you.
I'm glad to see y'all,
I
believe me.
bet. I didn't even know you had a heart, so I learned something very...
You know, they had to dig deep, sir.
Okay, well, we're glad to have you back, Steve.
Well, thank you, sir. The first one, we've got 2 ordinances coming up tonight for playgrounds. The first one being Gatlin Park and the second one being Laurel. And we had looked at doing some resurfacing, and the mayor suggested us take a hard look at the playground equipment too. And it just makes sense to go ahead and, since we're gonna do surfacing, just go ahead and replace all the playground equipment And we're asking you to approve the ordinance for Gatlin Park first at $235,189, and that'll come out of our A&P fund. And that'll replace the entire playground, add some inclusive equipment. Obviously, everything has to be ADA compatible, and we'll put in a surface of turf and poured-in-place rubber, so there won't be any more of the pine bark. But this will come out of the A&P funds.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance. I have it as 02152.
That's correct.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? All right, Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Hawkins,
You are ambidextrous, yes.
Ms. Mel.
Aye.
What does that mean?
Means you can do it either way.
That passes 6-0. Next up, we have an ordinance appropriating funds for improvements to be made at Laurel Park for the Conway Parks Recreation Department. I'd like to add too, that the equipment that's being removed will be repurposed. We'll send some of it to Pine Street, and we're going to send to the, you'd mentioned the park in West Conway, trying to do that, the Bainbridge Park.
Yes.
We're gonna
yes.
repurpose equipment over at Bainbridge too, and I think that park will really be used a lot.
It will be.
So, Mr. Ibbotson.
Yes, sir, this one will be offset, since we did budget some money for surfacing. We're requesting funds to offset the total cost to redo the playground and the surfacing out there. Same thing, we'll be doing all inclusive and ADA compatible playground, and it'll be a mixture of poured-in-place rubber and turf.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance. I have it as 02153.
Second?
Correct. We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Ms. Mel.
Discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion, my bad.
I would like to see new equipment in the Bainbridge Park rather than repurposed, just because I would. And it's in my ward.
All right, well, we'll just bring you back another ordinance here in 2 weeks with the price tag. How's that work?
Hey, works for me.
All right, we can do that. Anything else? All right, Ms. Mel.
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter.
Yes.
Mr. Grimes.
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Isby.
Yes.
All right. That passes 6-0.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, real quick while we're on parks, a little quick update on our Braves Baseball Special Needs League. Last year, we didn't play because of COVID. We're playing this year. Started last Thursday. We had a record number of signups, people playing. Bobby Kelly came out, did a nice little drone video and shots, put on our social media. And one of the Little Rock sports stations picked up on it and are going to come out this Thursday to do a segment from Braves Field here in Conway. So
All right.
it's off to a great start again this year.
Next up, we're on Public Safety Committee. We have Chief Tapley and it's an ordinance authorizing personnel changes for additional position for the Conway Police Department. Chief Tapley.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. We're asking for authorization for an additional secretary position here at the police department. The primary duties would consist of fulfilling FOI requests. The way we handle it now, it's divided out amongst several different jobs here at the police department, and it's just reached such a level that it's taking away from the individual's primary jobs. We're also having some issues with supplying the information to the requesters in a timely manner. So we're hoping that we can get a singular person that's trained and familiar with the rules and regulations in regard to FOI and the redaction processes that will help the whole process work.
And I think Mr. Finkenbeiner and I can also speak to this. The request for FOI is really, really increasing. For PD, it's daily. So I would agree with Chief Tapley that he needs some help there.
It is. We send our requests over for the city attorney's office to view them before we fulfill them. And Mr. Finkenbeiner can tell you how many requests we send over on a regular basis.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance along with the emergency clause, and I have it as 0/2154.
That is
Second.
correct. Have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Isby.
Yes.
In the emergency clause, Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Isby. Those both pass 6-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. And the last item on the agenda, council, that's going to be pulled. Mr. Finkenbinder, would you give him a brief explanation on this?
Yeah, so this relates to the bond issue for Conway Christian School and a reissue that they were pursuing. I don't know if everybody can hear me. So we had to track down a chairman of the board, and the board hadn't taken or met in several years. So we were able to do that, working with the Mitchell firm in Little Rock. And they've advised me this afternoon while I was in circuit court that they've made contact with the chairman, and he's going to sign the necessary release.
That work for y'all, council?
Yes.
But I would advise that at some point you allow me to make contact with the existing board members, some of whose terms have expired, and see if they're willing to stay on board.
And y'all can give us one from each of your wards. We'll just go from there. Well, that's all the business we have tonight. Appreciate the crowd and I appreciate everyone being here. And I'll take a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.